Hi everyone, welcome to this week's market commentary. I hope you're doing really well, had a great trading week and had a great weekend. I'm going to have a little look at the two markets that I covered last week in relation to potential setups that we were looking at. Now, neither of them have set up, but I want to analyse them to see if there is any potential still, and if not, basically that we're going to move on from them. Then we're going to have a little look at the American markets, and I want to have a look at crude because crude's getting to a really interesting level and it's definitely an area we want to be paying attention to. Now, one of the trades from last week's market commentary that I'd covered, and this is one that I was looking at to potentially take, was the Canadian dollar versus the Japanese yen. And what you can see is price had come up to the trend line. It was also back at this sort of resistance area and its 50 daily moving average. So I was looking to see if it could consolidate here to take the breakout. Now that's simply not happened. What we've had instead is the price has actually come back down and it's kind of hugging this 50 moving average and it's hugging the trend line as well. So really in that sense, I'm not necessarily going to change my mind and all of a sudden start thinking bearish. If I was going to, I would really want to see this level here broken, because if we can break that level, then maybe we can get back down towards the sort of 9,300 level. But still, overall, I'm not really convinced that that's the case, because once a trend finishes, either we will often do one of two things. We'll either go into a new trend in the opposing direction, or we often go into a consolidation. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to get involved if this goes into a wide daily based consolidation, as that can be quite volatile. So as far as the trade goes, in some respects, it's still got the potential. But what I need to happen, I need price to get it back to those highs of March. So the March current highs, obviously, we might go higher this month. But if we can get back up to this level, then I would look for the consolidation. And if we can do that, I will take this trade. Whether or not that'll happen this week, I think it's more likely that it would be into next week at the very earliest before the opportunity could and might be there. But we'll certainly see what happens. So keep an eye on it, but it's certainly not one that I'm in or interested in at the very short term, but it could easily change and come onto my radar. Now, the next one that I had highlighted was the American dollar versus the Canadian dollar. And this is quite an interesting one as well because I was looking for a possible short opportunity. And basically that's not come down. We've actually then, and this is where it gets really interesting, we've come back to the highs and we've had a bit of a reaction to those highs. So one of the things that I'm going to look for now is I would like to see us come down a bit just to confirm that this is doing a wider term consolidation. But then if we take it to the weekly, what I'm curious to know is if this is just a cooling off, if it's just had a pause, it might then go into a new trend, because if we do consolidate after we've done a trend, then we've always got the potential to continue. So if I then take a look at the weekly time frame just to get a gauge of where we're at overall in the market, what I can see is we probably get space up to about the 13,000 level. So what I could potentially look for on this one, subject to risk to reward of course, is a possible trade up to the 13,000 level. Now, as I say, risk to reward is going to be key because as you can see, it's not necessarily a huge amount of space. So for me, that would preferably be maybe a shorter term trade. So I might day trade it, or I might look at something of that nature on the basis that we could certainly get up to round about that 13,000 level. So I'd certainly keep an eye on that. The other thing I would say, just to finish on this one actually, I'm not necessarily writing off the breakout here, but a bit like Cadian, it needs to come down to here and it needs to consolidate here. If it can do that, then I would take the break. So again, I'm just going to keep an eye on these and see what happens. This one actually has more potential than Cadian for a possible short-term trade to the upside, but the short side is going to take a little bit. So I'll stick an alert in if we reached about 12,400. And if that triggers, I can then get it back and analyze it and see what happens. Now, if we go into the American markets, if you remember last week, one of the things that I was saying is the Dow had basically created this slight high, and I was saying that the problem with slight highs is it's all to do with momentum, and unless we make a key high, so for instance, if I look historically, we made this lovely high and we pull back. Now we pull back then into a lovely area of support and we've moved higher. Interestingly though, What's happened this time is we've made a new high, but because it's not gone high enough, it's not got the momentum, we've then easily made it back through. So for that purpose, I wasn't too keen on the upside because it hadn't broken up high enough. But on the other hand, I wasn't necessarily overly keen on the short because we're in a bit of no man's land. It's a bit volatile within here, and we've got some reactions at this level, and it wasn't great. But there was another indication of why we might possibly see some upside, which was actually to do with the Nasdaq. Now, if I load up the Nasdaq, what you'll notice with the Nasdaq did make a much better high. Now, obviously, it's come back through some of these levels, which is going to make it a little bit tricky in the short term. But what we can see is this is where we're reacting at. So for me with the Nasdaq, actually, if we can take out, so this is Monday, and that's the highs of today, which is about 4363. If we can take these out, then it does look like we might have some potential upside, which then in turn means if we go back to the Dow, we might see the Dow move back up. So the American markets, they're just a little bit tricky just now, but it's really interesting how we can use our price analysis to understand the potential direction and also what may or may not happen. So we maybe don't get sucked in to a trade that with good price analysis, we could easily protect our capital and stay out of. So to finish off this week's commentary, I'm going to have a look at the crude. Now, crude's obviously, I was looking at crude a little while back for a potential breakout up at these levels here. We were putting in an ascension. Now, interestingly, that ascending triangle failed. Since then, we've now made it back down to these lows. This is why this is one we want to keep an eye on definitely right now, because if we take it to the highest time frame, or in fact just the weekly, I think would be enough. Yeah, if you take it to the weekly, you'll notice back from 2009, we made it down to about $35 a barrel. So we can clearly see we have some more space in this market. So what I'm going to be looking for in the coming week is, can we consolidate where we are right now? And then if we can, I'm going to potentially look for a lovely breakdown, see if it can do that. But if we can just consolidate in here, then it might present a nice opportunity for a short, maybe down to about the 3600 level, being conservative in relation to our target. So that's one to keep an eye on right now. Alternatively, sorry, if it does move up, the problem I have is we're now getting little areas. So it would be fine to look at maybe a day trade back up and even past these levels, but it's not great. And again, for the upside, we really want to see this area here taken out, and then we could definitely be more optimistic about upside trades. So that's us for this week's market commentary. Have a fantastic trading week, and I'll catch up with you next week. All the best for now. Bye bye.